Today, many of us keep household pets. It's a practice going back thousands of years. Ancient Egyptians are often associated with cats. They are known to have worshipped cats, and feline deities played an important role in Egyptian religion. But there is also evidence that ancient Egyptians kept dogs for hunting and protection, and several of the Egyptian gods are canids, presented in the form of a jackal.
Dogs appear in ancient Egyptian art in a number of places. Very early on, we have depictions of dogs on rock art. We have depictions of dogs on very early decorated pottery from Egypt, dating to about 3500 BC. When we jump forward about 1,000 years or 2,000 years, we begin to see dogs appearing together with their owners on stelae, on the walls of tombs, and sometimes decorating coffins or other objects that are placed inside the tomb. We do have examples of certain dogs, some dogs being buried with their owners. It's sort of rare. In most cases, when we have animal mummies, whether it's a dog mummy or a cat mummy or any other kind of animal, usually those are not beloved pets. Those are animals that were mummified as votive offerings to particular gods and goddesses. It may happen in some cases that people did have pets, dogs or cats, that they were particularly fond of and wanted to have them mummified and placed in the tomb with them so that they could be with their owner for all eternity in the afterlife. Here in our collection at the Penn Museum, we have the mummy of a man by the name of Hapi-Men, and Hapi-Men's tomb was discovered around 1900. And he had a wonderful stone sarcophagus, and inside the sarcophagus was his mummy, and he was buried together with a small mummy of a dog. So we think that this was Hapi-Men's pet dog that he was buried with. We have a lot of gods that take the form of a cat from ancient Egypt, but we don't have any gods that take the form of a dog per se. But we do have some gods that appear in canid form. So there are dogs that are in jackal form or perhaps in wolf form. The ancient Egyptians were keen observers of their natural environment. And we think that very early on, the Egyptians observed jackals out in the desert scavenging around where people were buried. And very early in Egyptian history, people were just buried in shallow pits in the sand. And jackals were probably drawn to these burials. And so the Egyptians saw this and made this connection between the jackal and the dead. And what the Egyptians often try to do is if they see something that is negative, they try to connect it more to a positive force. So the jackal becomes a protector of the dead rather than someone who is scavenging up the dead. So we think that may be how jackals and the deceased become connected. There are a couple of very well-known jackal gods. The best known of them is, of course, the god Anubis, but there were at least two others that were pretty important to the ancient Egyptians. One was a god named Wepwawet, whose name meant the opener of the ways, and then there was another one named Duamutef, who is one of the four sons of Horus, and those were the gods that protected the internal organs and were depicted on the tops of canopic jars. One of the most important myths in Egyptian religion is the Osiris myth, and this myth tells the story of the god Osiris and the struggle he has with his jealous brother Seth. Osiris was the king. Seth wanted to be the king, and he plotted and planned a way to kill Osiris to take the kingship. He winds up essentially chopping Osiris up into a bunch of pieces, tossing his body parts into the Nile, and then it's left to Osiris's wife, his sister Isis, and her sister Nephthys to go around Egypt collecting all of the body parts. Isis is great of magic, and she's able to bring Osiris back to life. In some versions of this myth, she is assisted by Anubis, and Anubis is the one who wraps up Osiris in linen and essentially creates the first mummy. And Isis is then able to sort of reanimate the mummy long enough to produce a child with Osiris, and this is the god Horus, who then goes on to become king in his father's place. So Anubis plays this very important role as the one who kind of invents mummification in Egyptian mythology.